Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to a books I want to reread video. So I don't know, kind of take this as recommendations because they're books I liked enough that I would want to reread. There are also some books that I haven't read in a long time and I'd like to see if I still like them. But pretty much all these books I'm going to show are ones that I have gotten as gifts or else I have purchased because I like them so much. So a lot of times if I love a book, right, I'll put it on my wish list and either I will eventually then buy a copy or someone will send it to me. And so some of these were books that like I've had them on my wish list for like a really long time because I knew that I liked them. But then I'm like, wow, do I still like them now that I have a physical copy? And then some of them are books that like I straight up know that I love them and it's just been so long since I've read them that I need to do it. And then a couple of them are ones that there's going to be more books coming out in their series. And so I want to reread these. So we're just going to go in. I'm going to try to keep this one quick because I'm not going to go into the full details of each of the books. But we'll see if that happens. You know how I go. So let's actually start with the historicals because I just have 3 of those, so we'll go really quick. One of them is Broken Wing by Judith James. I actually just read this one in 2021. I only read it, I think, back in the summer, but I loved it so much, and now I have a physical copy, and I really want to annotate this one. This one is, it's a romance, but it's a little more like historical fiction-y, even though like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but this was a viewer recommendation and it was one that I was sure that I wasn't going to like, okay? And I loved it so much. It was gut-wrenching. This one, the reason why I said it's not fully a historical romance is because it's more about a man's like journey, but a huge part of his journey is his love of a woman. So it has an HEA. The romance was still extremely satisfying. I just want to make clear that like there are parts of this book where like they are apart and we're focusing on the journey that the man is going through. So our hero, his name is Gabriel, and he was raised in a brothel and he has been a prostitute. And then there is a little boy, I can't remember his name, but he had been like sold to this brothel, and Gabriel has been keeping him safe for the last few years until this boy's older siblings, Sarah and I think Thomas is his name. Again, I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've read it. They come to rescue him, and the little boy refuses to leave if Gabriel doesn't come with. So the brother and sister are like, okay, well, we'll pay you to be his companion and come back with us. And then once he is used to being at home, then we'll make sure you get where you want to go. And he ends up falling in love with Sarah. And again, he wants to become a man of worth. And so he ends up taking to the high seas at one point. And it's really about him, you know, coming to terms with the fact that he's worthy of love, as well as just finding his own worth for himself too, because he's been through a lot. Then I want to reread The Heir by Grace Burrows, which I actually have started rereading because one of my friends was going to read it, and this is one of my favorite historicals of all time. I believe so, okay? The first time I read this book, this is a class difference. This is a housekeeper and a duke, and they have a misunderstanding in the beginning, and she brains him with a fire poker because she thinks he's taking advantage of a maid. He's not. It's a misunderstanding, but he's just like, now he's taken notice of this woman who was literally brave enough to hit him with a fire poker to protect a maid. And so he kind of like blackmails her into taking care of him. He's like, well, I'm going to dismiss you if you won't take care of me, but really like he's not. And it's their romance. So I did start rereading it and annotating this one, and I want to continue it. So I'm putting it on this list so that it's official. But I just want to make sure I still love it as much as I did. The things that really touched me about this one at that time specifically was that our hero is definitely physical touch, like in the way that he shows affection and loves. And because he's a duke, like he doesn't really get to show that type of affection. And so of course, when you are in a romantic relationship with someone, like physical touch is happening, but there are so many quiet, beautiful moments in this where like he's just talking with her and he needs to like hold her hand, where nothing sexual is happening and he just wants to lean his head against her because he wants to touch her. And there are these beautiful, vulnerable moments between this man who has the weight of so many on him And he just wants that comfort of human touch, you know, because that's not something that he's allowed to like afford himself as being the like, you know, commanding man that he is. And our heroine, this is her first job as a head of household, as like a head housekeeper, because her and her younger sister are on the run from something that our Duke wants nothing more than to save her from, and something that she is very reluctant to share with him. So I want to reread that. Then the Duchess Deal. I feel like I don't need to tell you what this book is about. This is a staple for people, but I haven't read this book in 3 years. And I don't know when, if ever, we're going to get the bride bet, but I really want to reread this book because it's one that I recommend to people all the time. And I'd like to see if I still get the same joy and fun out of it that I used to. So we're going to give it a go. But this one starts with, this is a marriage deal. And this woman is a vicar's daughter who's a seamstress, and she hasn't been paid for a wedding dress that she made for a duke because the woman he was supposed to marry abandoned him when he became scarred. And so she shows up wearing the wedding dress to like demand payment, and he's like, how about you marry me and let me get you pregnant and I'll make you rich. So let's see how I feel about it. All right, then I have kind of sort of a fantasy one, and this is one that I love. I love this copy so much, and I really, really want to reread this book because it's been a very long time. So this one is Cold Queen by K. Webster. This is a retelling of the Ice Queen. It's a retelling of Frozen because there is sisters who represent like Anna and Elsa, and our Cold Queen, she is at war with, I think he's like a demon king or something, or the Blood King. And she is very sick, like she's dying, and she doesn't have anyone to take care of her sister. So she wants to try to find someone who will do that. And then this king enters, and he has some things to say about it. This one definitely has a trigger warning at the end, specifically for like cannibalism. There is literally a warning for like mutilation and cannibalism at the end of this book. I remember that very distinctly, but also there is some non-con and dubious consent in this book. But yeah, this is a really quick one. It's like a novella length, and I really want to reread it soon. I love K. Webster. I'm nowhere near reading all of her books. People always want me to do a deep dive on her books, and I was like, guys, I love you, but that's not going to happen because there's no way that I will ever have all of her books read. I want to reread Wrong and Right by Jana Aston. I remember these being absolutely hilarious. They're some of my favorite comedic romances. And I was actually talking about with a friend the other day about a certain scene that was happening in a book she was reading. And I was like, there's another book I love that has a scene like that. And I thought it was hilarious. And so I kind of wanted to reread these. The first one is this one. And these are both age gaps, by the way. But this one is with a gynecologist and his virgin patient. And it's a surprise baby novel. But she has an interesting experience the first time she goes to see him on her table. This one is a brother's best friend's brother romance. Our heroine Everly, which this was the first book I ever read with a heroine named Everly after I have a niece named Everly, which y'all, I make jokes on this channel that there's too many characters named Everly for my meaning. But Everly has been in love with her brother's best friend for a very long time. And she has made some very strong forward advances towards him that he has been putting off, trying not to offend his best friend, but also he's not interested in her. And then she goes a bit too far, and so she needs a ride back to campus. Because here's the thing too, is like he's a teacher at her school where she goes to school, and she is making things very awkward for him at school because he's, again, not interested. So this guy that she's interested in, he has an older brother. So it's an even like bigger age gap because he's an older brother and he's interested in her. And so he tells her, he's going to drive her back to her apartment from like Thanksgiving dinner. And he uses this ride to convince her that she should go on a date with him. So I love this because he really pursues her, and he's a rich businessman, and he's just kind of enamored with this young woman who's in love with his younger brother, but he wants her. So yeah, this is a brother's best friend's older brother age gap romance. Then I have two books that are actually also age gaps and are actually a lot of books that I'm about to show you are age gap ones. But these ones are student-teacher romances. So we have Misbehaved by Charleigh Rose. This is one that I read a couple years back when I was doing my age gap binge, and I loved it. This one is Remy and Pierce. And Pierce, the teacher, his younger sister was taken advantage of by her stepbrother. So there's that. Also, Remy's stepbrother is kind of creeping on her, and she's just this woman who's in kind of a vulnerable position. This one's also a little bit of a bully because Pierce is like not putting up with her flirting with him. It gave me a lot of vibes from Dark Notes. It's not the same as like the BDSM element, but kind of like the spark relationship that Emmerich and Ivory had is kind of between these two as well. But I know that she's definitely a brat, and I like that aspect. And this one was also like the angst and like the sexual tension between them was like so good. So I'm interested to see if I still love this one. This one is Her Perfect, again, a student-teacher romance, but this one isn't as big of an age gap. This is one where he's also her brother's best friend, and he's only 4 years older than her, and he's come back, and now he is her math teacher, but their age difference is only 4 years. And she is the youngest daughter of a family. There's a trigger warning for an eating disorder in this book. It's a pretty big part of the story, so just know that. But okay, so this one, again, this is supposed to be taboo and forbidden, but it does not have the feel of that. This hero is the only person who like sees this girl. She's very lost in her family, who really only cares about the boys in the family, and she's just kind of left to her own devices to, obviously, as I said, to the tune of like self-harm, where she's trying to control some part of her life. And the way that he sees her, and yeah, it's so amazing. Also, the use of like therapy and help in this book, I really loved. So this is kind of dark. This is heavy is more what I would say, but like their relationship is so beautiful. Like it's so beautiful. And when I'm ready for a bit of a darker tale again, a heavier story, I really want to give this one a go. Then I have the Love Don't Cost a Thing, like Duet by Brianna Hale. These were books that I had first read because Tamika from Library of Tomes had, she's in love with Brianna Hale. I think they did a readathon all last year, like reading her backlist. And I loved these. The first one, Come to Daddy, is a sugar baby romance, a little bit of daddy kink. These are also mafia adjacent. So this one, he is looking to take care of her because of a debt that he owes her family, but he doesn't want her to know that he's paying her. So when he finds out from his assistant that she is on a sugar baby's website to kind of make some money, he decides to become her sugar daddy as a way to like funnel lots of money to her. But they end up liking the daddy kink just a little bit. Then we have Lap of Luxury. This one is a bit more the mafia side, and our heroine is the assistant from the guy in this one, and she ends up witnessing something she shouldn't when Damir does something very bad, and she also gets a little turned on by what he's doing, and so he kidnaps her and takes her to his yacht and keeps her as his pet. So I wanted to reread these now that I had the books, because these covers are beautiful. Then I have The Italian by TL Swan. This was one of the first mafia books that I read. This was one of the first TL Swans that I had ever read. And Ferreira, which is kind of a sequel to this one, is supposed to be coming out anytime now. And I really want to reread this book. I know it's going to frustrate me, okay? TL Swan's self-published books do not give me the same kind of feels as her Montlake ones do. Specifically, you know what I'm talking about. But I remembered just loving this. It was like a telenovela. It was a drama. It's an Australian girl who's on a trip to Italy with her friend, and she meets this hot police officer, and she promises to come back at the end of her trip. Well, while she's gone, our hero, who is a police officer, discovers that his father is a part of the mob, which he somehow didn't realize how involved his family was with the mob, which I don't understand. And both his grandfather and his father die in a hit. And so now he has to leave the police force and become the head of this mafia. And so when this girl, who's only been gone a couple weeks, comes back, his life is in a completely different place. So he pushes her away, he embarrasses her, treats her badly to get her to run away and never come back because he doesn't want her involved in anything he's dealing with. But then he misses her. And so a few years later, he manipulates things so that she's back in town, and he's going to try to have her. This one is a bit of a painful one for me too, because I don't like a mistress trope. I don't like it in a historical, and I don't love it here now. He is not married that we're dealing with, but he is supposed to have a, mob marriage, and she's this outsider from Australia who's not Italian, and he wants her. He's like, if you guys want me to be the head of this, I need to have something for myself. And she's like, I don't know if I can just be your side piece while you have your babies with someone else. So this might be tough to get through. I may not end up reading every single page, but I do want to go back through this again before I read Ferreira, just to make sure I'm ready. And then the last ones I want to put in this video is the Degradation series by Style Fantome. These were the first books I read in either 2020 or 2021. I'm not sure. But this, I think, was maybe my first integration to Degradation. I don't know. But this one is an age gap. This one is a sister's fiance romance, but just in the beginning. And it starts 7 years ago when 18-year-old Tatum has kind of like I don't want to say affair because it's one interaction with Kane, who is engaged to her sister, and they have this thing, and then her family finds out about it, and she gets ostracized. Well, he breaks up with her sister, they don't get married, but he doesn't have any consequences for him. She is basically cut off, banished from the family, and needs to make her own way in the world as an 18-year-old because of this indiscretion. So now it's 7 years later, and she's back in Kane's line of fire, and they go on quite a ride together. This series, I don't know how I'll feel about it now, but I finally bought the books for myself. These were a Christmas present because they've stuck with me. And I really need to check them out again and see how I feel. I wish they were an audiobook, but there's Degradation, Separation, Reparation, and then I'm still waiting for Completion, which is it's an epilogue collection. So I'm excited for those. Okay, so those are some books I'd like to reread. I don't really have a timeline for these. They're just ones that I want to get to when I get to, and just see if I still feel the same way about them. So keep an eye out for those. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.